Welcome to In Bed with a Druid, where I snuggle up with fascinating people as I tempt them to reveal their cheeky bedtime secrets and chat intimately about their lives, beliefs, careers, wishes and dreams. Welcome to the second episode of In Bed with a Druid. Today I'm cozying up with the lovely Druid, bard and drummer extraordinaire, Adam Ranger.
There were two in the bed and the little one said.
Joining us as usual, we have Gary watching proceedings from the bottom of the bed. Adam, thank you for agreeing to snuggle up with me in the Druid bed this evening.
My pleasure. It's lovely to be here. Very cosy it is too.
I'm glad you like it. Do you have a favourite kind of bed?
It's a good question. Honestly, no. I don't have a favourite kind of bed. I think, I've got my bed at home, which isn't a particularly special bed, but it's kind of, it's nice to come back to. It's just a bed, and I suppose it's a cosy feel. But I'm one of those people that can sleep anywhere.
Sleep on a clothesline?
Absolutely. Annoys Rebecca. I can just sleep on a wall, a clothesline, anything. But I think my favourite bed of recently is I walk on the South Downs from time. I do a South Downs Way walk every year.
Yeah.
And the last few years I've done that. And last year I did it without a sleeping bag. I just did it in a bivvy. Well, no, a sleeping bag without a tent. I had a sleeping bag in a bivvy bag. And sleeping on a bed of sort of grass and heather in a meadow with the sky as my blanket, seeing the sun go down and the stars and then the sun come up in the morning. That was really, really special.
That sounds amazing. 3
nights I think I slept better, even though I wasn't in a tent or constrained by a house or anything, than I have done for a long time. But
that sounds absolutely
it's also
amazing.
a very Druidy answer,
It
is.
is. And we'll get back to that later, because I'd like to talk to you a bit more about
but
that.
Other than that, I will sleep pretty much anywhere, but it's
as you can see, I've decorated the bed with lots of greenery just for you.
I see, yeah,
with the whole long man thing, the whole green man picture. Now, you had a picture painted recently, didn't you?
I did. In fact, I've had 2. But recently I had a picture of my son, my youngest son, Freddie, who's sort of 9, he's 10 this year, and he painted me a fantastic picture of the long man because he knows how special that place is to me. And it now hangs on my wall next to a picture that my eldest son, Ross, painted a few years ago when he was 13.
Oh, really?
So I've got these 2 pictures of the long man painted by my sons at different times in sort of their lives. And
we're talking about the long man of Wilmington.
Long man of Wilmington, the chalk figure, Windover Hill, a place that's very special to me. So having, Freddie did that picture recently, and it's really special. I love it.
So, that's wonderful, having pictures painted of your kids. I remember having them on my walls and on my fridges and everywhere. And now we've moved on, and I've got granddaughter painting them as well. So
that's lovely. It's nice. It's nice as well that this particular picture, he knew it was something special for me. I got a sort of an affinity with the long man, which we'll probably come into. But so the fact that he chose that, it was lovely. Really
that's
touched.
really sweet. So you're a druid, a bard, and a drummer.
In that order? Yes, I am indeed.
I'm going to kind of address all of them, but we'll talk about all of them. But first of all, let's talk about your druidry.
Okay,
How long have you been a druid?
I've been on what I call the druid path now for about 17 years, I think.
Okay. And how would you describe your druidry? And everybody looks at me like that when I ask them.
It is a good question because people say, it's about a love of nature and a turn in the seasons, and it's an appreciation of nature. But that's not druidry. That is part of it. That's paganism as a broad umbrella. They all have that at their heart. So what makes me call myself a druid? I think there's 3 things that to me make me on a druid path as opposed to a generic pagan path or any other type of pagan path. I think there's this love of nature, a respect to the turning of the wheel and the seasons, but it's a bit more than that. It's also trying to find a connection with the different seasons, with the nature and the world around you, not just having a love of nature. It doesn't make you a pagan just having love of nature necessarily. It doesn't make you a druid necessarily, but there's this connection, trying to find a connection, I should say. So that's one aspect. The second thing about what makes me a druid, I think, is the search for, I say wisdom, it makes me sound like a wise man, but I don't necessarily mean wisdom as let me be the wisest man in the world, but trying to make sense of things around me, that sort of connectedness where I am in the world, and trying to sort of seek wisdom or knowledge or guidance from the goddess and the gods, as I believe very strongly. And I think the third element that makes me call myself a druid is there is the bardic element you mentioned as well, but there's an element in Druidry where it's the stories that are important, the old stories, the old tales of the gods and the goddesses that sort of make us who we are, what we can learn from them. And it's the telling of those stories that keeps the spirits and the gods and the goddesses alive. And there's a big thing in Druidry, generally the bardic side, about talking about those stories, retelling them, what we can learn from them, and writing your own stuff about the praise of the gods and spirits and things. So it's that creative element, it's that search for knowledge, and it's that reverence and searching for connection with nature that makes me call myself a druid as opposed to a witch or a heathen or a general pagan, I guess. I don't know. Other druids may give you a completely separate idea. I think
I'm sure we're going to hear quite a few of those.
But there's that. Druids, we like doing things in threes. That's right. Which is why it's nice that Gary's here at the end of the bed. But there's the Arwen, the 3 ways of the Arwen is the Druid symbol that people will know about if they know about. And that's.
Could you tell us a bit about the Arwen? Because we're going to have people listening who don't necessarily know about Druidry or the Arwen.
I mean, the Arwen. So it's a symbol. I think it's Welsh but it's a symbol of inspiration. So it's 3 drops of the Arwen. So there's 3 dots and 3 rays that come joined together. So it symbolizes different things to different people. But generally, those 3 rays of inspiration, it brings together, well, maybe the 3 things I talked about in a sense, the quest for nature, the quest for knowledge, and the bardic element are the 3 rays. The 3 worlds, the world below, the world above, and the world we're in now. That's the 3 drops of those. You've got inspiration, that it sort of brings it all together, I think.
Creative inspiration.
Yeah, it's sort of about, the rays of inspiration, I suppose.
You mentioned the gods and goddesses. Is deity important in your druidry, in your daily life?
It is to me, yes, very much so. I know there are people that don't necessarily follow the gods or believe in the gods and the goddesses.
I think that's the beautiful thing about Druidry. You can express it whichever way you want.
I think in Druidry, and other paganism as well in general, but you don't, there's no dogma that you have to believe in this god or this goddess, or you have to believe this and that. It's kind of very much up to you, what it means to you, as opposed to the goddess is very important to me and has become very much more important to me over the last few years, 4 years particularly, but she was always there. But, she's been really important to me in recent years. After I sort of met her on a walk, which, people laugh at, but I have met the goddess.
No, tell us. Real, tell me.
Well, the first walk I did on the South Downs Way about 4 years ago, the first one I did, I decided I was going to walk the South Downs Way. My idea was I was back in connection with the land around Sussex that I love so much. And I thought I'm going to meet maybe the Green Man or the God, which were quite important to me at the time and still are. So, of course that didn't happen, but because it's the first walk of that nature that I'd done for so long, I had pulled a muscle in my leg and my rucksack wasn't.
So did you go to actually meet them, or?
I had this idea in my head that, I wanted to, I like walking. The South Downs Way is an ancient trackway. It's like the M25 of the Neolithic age or whatever. It's to connect everything.
It's a Roman road as well, and all sorts of things, wasn't it?
Settlements up there. There's barrows, there's hill forts. It's, there's so much. It's where people.
How long is it?
It's 98 miles. It's 107 miles if you count the loop around Eastbourne, but it's 98 miles from Winchester to Eastbourne plus the extra loop. So it's 107 miles all in.
Okay.
If you go from very start to the very end.
And as you say, it's an ancient trackway, isn't it?
Yeah, there are old forts and long barrows all along the way. So and you say the Romans, there were flint mines that the Romans used. So it is an ancient pathway in itself. Something like 3,000 years old, the sort of people there. So I went with the idea of getting back in touch with the land. I felt that was maybe lacking a bit in what I was doing, other than going to open rituals. I kind of lost a bit of connection with the land around me.
Yeah.
And it's kind of an important thing, as I mentioned. That's one of the things about Druidry that I was drawn to. So I thought, well, I'll go for a walk on the land. And because the Green Man had always been my thing, the trees, and how I came to paganism in the first place, I thought, well, maybe I'll meet Herne, the Green Man, the god, as I'm walking along these roads. I had that in my mind, that I might have a conversation with the god or the Green Man as I'm walking. And that's what I wanted to do. Because things don't work out the way you want them to be, you know, that people have designs for you. But it was great. I was having, it was a really enjoyable walk. But as I say, I had pulled a muscle in my leg because my rucksack wasn't fully adjusted. I was doing, walking funny as a result. And I got to a stage, I think about Amberley Mount, and I was quite fed up. I'd enjoyed the walk, but at that point it was really hot that day.
So how far had you walked at that
I was
point?
about 60 miles at that point.
Wow.
So yeah, I was doing okay. I wasn't, and it was never about finishing the whole thing. It was about walking what I could. So it wasn't an endurance test.
So how many days had you done that 60 miles?
That was 3.5 days.
Wow.
So it was quite a clip, I suppose. It's 18 to 20 miles a day, which isn't, it's quite a long way to walk.
It is,
especially when I hadn't done something like that.
And some of those hills are really steep.
Do you know, there's always laughs about it. We call it the Downs, but there's a lot of going up. And I know that the Downs is the Sussex word for hill before any of your listeners sort of put me right on there. But yeah. So there was a lot of going up and a lot of walking and a lot of fantastic scenery. But at that particular point, I was in a lot of pain and I sat on the top of this Amberley Mount, one of the highest points, and I just sat there thinking, right, when everybody's gone past me, because obviously it's a busy trackway during the day in the summer, I'm just going to sit here till everyone's gone, and I'm going to put my tent up quietly where nobody can see me, and then tomorrow morning I'm just going to go home because I've just had enough. I'm abject, feeling really sorry for myself. So I sat on this hill looking out over the range there, and I closed my eyes and I thought, I'm just going to wait, and the sun was beautiful. And then something brushed my cheek. A hand brushed my cheek, just sort of gently, like that. You can't see it, it's a podcast, but I'm miming a hand brushing my cheek. A hand brushed my cheek, and a lady said, "Let me sit beside you." And I looked, and there was this lady who, she wasn't dressed in modern clothes. She wasn't exactly dressed in old-fashioned clothes. She was kind of a bit like what you might call medieval clothes if you were trying to describe it, but I couldn't. But I wasn't a lady I knew. And she said, "Let me sit beside you," as I say. That's all she said. And she sat beside me.
What colour was she wearing?
It was, I don't really know.
You don't remember?
It was kind of like a white and green dress. So, and her hair was kind of, it wasn't white blonde, but it was kind of blondish, mousy blonde. I don't know. And she had a sort of crown on her head, but it wasn't. It was like not a wreath, but a flower wreath on her head, which is why I sort of said the medieval style of it. Yeah. And she just sat down and she didn't say anything else. And when I opened my eyes, she was gone. But I had this, I'm welling up thinking about it. I had this immense feeling of having met something really, really special. And I felt it was like, I don't have to prove anything to my goddess. I don't have to prove anything to myself. Doing this walk isn't an endurance. If you want to stop now, it's not a problem. You can carry on if you want. You've not let anybody down. Yeah. And this whole kind of feeling of immense, I just really can't explain it. It was just a real spiritual experience, and people laugh when you say things like that, but it left me feeling, well, I knew that was the goddess. That was the goddess who, it was important to me before then, but from this point on, she's been there. I know she's there. She's real. She's not some kind of archetype necessarily that you sort of just talk about. And I was able to go on for the next couple of days, and I still didn't finish the whole way because of the weather and stuff. But I did another 20 miles. I did most of it.
Oh, really?
I finished just outside of Eastbourne.
Other people I've heard speak about meeting her in different guises. And it's always like they've described it as almost a whole body experience.
It was. I mean, as I say, I'm tearing up just talking about it. And I sat down in a car on the way home, and Rebecca picked me up, and I was telling her about it, and I was in floods of tears when I was telling her about it. It was just the most. It was an out of body. It was a weird thing, and it was somebody was there with me. And I know people say it was just a piece of grass, or it's just the wind, it's just my mind. They can say that as much as they like, and that's fine. But I know
they weren't there.
I know that when she brushed my cheek, that was so real. There was it wasn't a piece of grass. It was, the feeling when your mum used to brush your cheek as a child. It was that kind of thing. And it was just the most I don't know, uplifting experience I've had in many, many years.
That's amazing.
And
Absolutely
so
amazing.
the goddess is real. Not everybody believes in her, but I've met her. I haven't seen her since, but I know she's there. So
Absolutely.
it was crazy.
Yeah.
It was brilliant.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
A pleasure. Thank you.
Because, you know, you're not going to have anybody laughing at you here.
Yeah, that's good to
and
hear,
and I hope our listeners would take that seriously as well.
yeah, I'm sure they will. Whether they don't, then that's fine. I don't really, you know, it's my experience, and I know, and it was, and that's all that really matters, I think, isn't it? So,
I think it is. Now, steel yourself, because we asked Mr. Draven from our previous interview, as we're going to do with you for the next people we interview. Would he come up with a question for us to ask you?
Oh, okay.
And because of the question,
thanks, Greg. I think, yeah.
because of what we're talking about, I've chosen to ask you the question now.
Okay.
And his question was there a defining moment when you realised Druidry was the path for you? And, could you describe your ideal woman, please?
To the second part of that question, Greg, no. Mind your own business. Okay,
Well done.
You're a happy married man, just leave it. No. Was there a moment?
Seriously, the defining moment is quite an interesting question. Yeah.
Okay, I think... Yes, there was. There very much was when that hit me. I think when I came to paganism, I'd always considered myself a bit of an agnostic. I like nature, I like being out of nature, but I never associated it with a spiritual experience as such when I was growing up as a child. And I really didn't like the religion that was around, you know, the dogma, and it wasn't for me. Don't have a problem with it, just wasn't for me. So just nothing worried about.
So you're talking about kind of organised religion and stuff, wasn't your thing?
Exactly, the organised side of things. And it's, you know, I don't have a problem with it, but it just wasn't something that felt right for me.
Yeah.
And at that time, my previous wife decided, we just moved to Sussex. So this was 20 years ago. She decided she was going to, she wanted to look into paganism. She found local pagan circle, Eastbourne pagan circle was around at the time.
So where did you move from?
We moved from Croydon. I lived in Croydon.
Oh, I see.
Many people say, for people who don't know Croydon, it's like South London. So I moved to Sussex about 20 years ago.
Wow, that must have been that was a big change then, really.
It was a big change. I still work in Croydon. I still travel up there, and I lived there for 30 years. So it was a big change, and it was a change for the better. It's so much better down here. Sussex is my home now. I feel
beautiful,
at home
isn't
here.
it?
It's just the most wonderful place. So best thing I ever did was moving down here.
Uh-huh.
But when we did that, so she wanted to find out about paganism. She heard about it. So she went to the local pagan circle. And at that time, I thought the way I can support her, because it was just all mumbo jumbo, I think, to me at the time, sort of, I thought I can learn to identify trees. Mm-hmm. And so when we went out, I got a little book, Collins' Book of Trees, and I flicked through it, and it became really dog-eared. Everywhere I went, this little book of trees, and finding the trees by their bark and by their leaves, and it's something I'm still trying to do now. I never quite managed it. But through that, I found that there were folk tales attached to some of these trees.
Yep.
And I've always been interested in stories and telling stories and, you know, listening to good stories and folk tales. I thought that was brilliant. And then that led me to something called Ogham, which is some people language of the trees, you know, a bit like the runes, if people aren't familiar with the Ogham, but a tree version.
It's kind of, it's like a divination alphabet, isn't it,
Each
really?
symbol represents one of the 20 indigenous trees of the British Isles, and it's got it's used for communication apparently by the ancient Druids, but it's also used in modern ways as a divination. Each tree, each symbol means a different thing. So that was great, and that was okay. And I thought this is really good. So then I started going to Eastbourne Pagan Circle with my ex-wife, and it was quite Wiccan, which was great. It was not a problem with that. A lot of the rituals, the open rituals they did, were in the evening, under the full moon or and again, not a problem. But somebody told me when I was speaking to them, and maybe you should go and see the Anderida Gorsedd, the Druid group that meets up the hill by the Longman. You might find it interesting. I thought, well, so I did. I went up there, Beltane, which, coincidentally enough, is when I met Mr. Draven for the very first time. He wasn't part of the group anymore. We went up there to see what was going on. He was having a picnic with his wife, Nikki, and they got involved at the same time. So, but it was that moment, I think, we were up on the hill, and it was a Beltane ritual. And there were two things that there was the stag chase, the now legendary stag chase.
No, you're going to have to explain this now.
Well, in the midst of Avalon, there's a stag chase, I don't think. And Dave and Kerry run the Gorsedd up at the hill. decided that they were going to have something similar for Beltane for the guys. And so the women and guys separated. The women did their thing. The women's mysteries. We guys, we never knew what that was. It was something they did. But the guys drank beer, did a toast, a boast, and a promise with each other. And then at a given point, they all charged down the hill to try and find some stag antlers that Dave had hidden in the coppice of stinging nettles earlier on that day.
I see. That was helpful.
It was very helpful. Always in the stinging nettles. And the idea was not necessarily the fastest person to get there. Because once you got there, you had to then find where they were hidden. So there was this hunt for the antlers. And whoever found the antlers was the May King for that year.
Yep.
And then the women chose the May Queen by their methods there, and the two came together as part of the ceremony. And that became so took part in that, which was just like, whoa, this is amazing. This is brilliant. But the other thing that hit me was the Druidry, I think, was that here I was celebrating Beltane, spring, in the sunshine on an afternoon.
Yeah.
And I have nothing against what the sort of Wiccans were doing at that time.
I think it's what gels with you, isn't it, really?
It is. And that did, to me, it suddenly struck me. If I'm thinking about following a nature-based spirituality, I like the idea that I can see it around me.
Yeah.
And that's when I spoke to Dave, and it was the Gorsedd, the Druid, they were Druid groups, and then I looked into that, maybe that was my spirituality. And then there was the story elements that came into it. So that was the moment, I think, when I decided that Druidry seemed to be the path that fitted with my beliefs and how my beliefs were developing.
Yeah.
And so that was probably that moment.
And it's quite breathtaking up there as well. The view is
fantastic
just
place.
something
You
else.
can see up to Ardley Reservoir one way, and on the top of the hill they've got ancient long barrows, which have long since been sort of desecrated, but there's still the ancient barrows up there. It's an ancient landscape. Don't know how old the long man is. Some say he's only 300 years old, maybe he's longer, but the whole landscape is ancient. It's all part of the South Downs, which you mentioned earlier. The burial, there's a flint mine there, which was sort of Roman times. So there's history in those hills. There's history in them hills, I tell you.
There is. The same sort of thing happened with me when I went up there, and I was picked as the May Queen. First time I went was Beltane, and I was picked as the Beltane.
You want to share what they did up there?
I do. It was wonderful.
Yeah.
However, this isn't about me. It's about you. While we're still on the subject of Druidry, and I'm probably going to ask everybody this, how do you feel about formalised Druidry courses? Do you have to complete one to call yourself a Druid? Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because it's hit the news recently.
Oh, has it?
Mark Almond has become a Druid.
I heard that, yes.
By, I think it was reading a book and hearing a CD, and now he's studying.
Right, okay.
And I wanted to be interested to know what your thoughts are on it.
Do you have to do a course to be a Druid? No, of course you don't. I don't. I don't. I mean, I am in Obord. I did join Obord a few years ago, and I started the Bardic course.
So this is the order
of Bards, Ovates, and Druids. So I keep forgetting some. Many people, your listeners might not know that. So the Order of Bards, Ovates, and Druids is a Druid group. They're based in Sussex, but they're an international group.
I think they're the biggest Druid order in the world, actually,
You've
at the
got
moment.
The British Druid Order as well, but Obod is, I think, one of the largest. And they do a course, don't they? They do a course that's in 3 parts. They do where you study as first of all, as a bard, then you do the Ovate, which is, I think, more about it's
kind of the divination.
It is the divination, and then you do the final part is the Druid, which is in the top level. You bring it all together, and it's the teaching and the knowledge, and it all comes together. Now, there are those that think before you can call yourself a Druid, you have to have done the Bard, Ovate, and Druid courses. But I don't think you do, because I think in this modern world, that's a great course. I'm not knocking it. I did the Bard course and I stopped. I didn't want to take it any further at that time. I didn't have the resources, which is always a consideration. But I don't think you need someone else to certify your spirituality.
Absolutely.
I know what I believe. Yeah. I don't need to do a course to say I'm a Druid.
You don't need a badge.
No, I don't. I don't need a badge. And I know myself as well. I'm very bad at being told what to do. So if I had submitted something and someone said, no, that's not right, I would have thought, how dare you tell me that's not right? How could you tell me what's spiritual? And I'm sure they wouldn't do that. The mentors are very good.
I don't think they do.
No, it's a well-respected course, and I don't want to diss Obod in any sense. So that my reason for not taking it forward wasn't because I disliked Obod.
It was a personal one.
It was a personal thing. I loved the Bard. element, and I'm quite happy to have just done the bardic element. But even that, I didn't. It was years before I did that. I was calling myself a druid before that, so it's a personal choice to do that. I've met people who have done all 3 courses, and I don't think they're any more knowledgeable than me. I'm not saying I'm the most knowledgeable person, far from it. I've met people that have just done the first course, and they're more knowledgeable than me. So it's horses for courses, funny enough. But for me, it
doesn't need to be a formalised.
No, it doesn't be a formalised. It's not. Yeah, there are some places you may need formal training before you can go forward and everything else. But I don't think it matters to me. Other people may disagree with me, and that's entirely their decision. But to me, I'm quite happy. I don't think there's anything that I do in my Druidry that anybody who's done all 3 of those courses would look back and say, "Well, you can't really call yourself a druid."
No, and I don't think that's what it's about either.
I don't think it is. No, and I don't think anybody that's done all 3 courses, in all fairness, would turn around to me and say, "Why are you calling yourself a druid? You've only done the bardic course."
I think it's all about our individual paths at the end of the day.
I've got no problem with Obod or their course. I just know that maybe it's not for. I don't know. I learn different ways as well.
It's and it's just not for you. You decided you were doing it, and that's where you decided to stop.
Yeah, that's not to say I think I know everything. I don't want to learn stuff. I go to camps and things. I learn from people. Go to events. I meet people and talk stuff about different paths and what they're doing, and you learn things that way. I'm looking forward to talking to you about that in a minute. Okay.
However, I have to ask you another bed question.
Oh yeah, well we are in bed.
We are in bed, and it's very important that we remember that we're in bed.
Yeah.
So, my next bed question is, what do you do in bed that's unusual?
Unusual? Well...
It's only us 3. You can tell me. It's fine.
I don't know, because I'm asleep most of the time. I don't really do anything. I don't wear clothes. That's not unusual. That's most people a lot of people don't wear clothes in bed.
That's one question. I'll strike that one off there. I can see you don't wear clothes
exactly.
in bed,
here we are. It's lovely. It's warm in here, which is good, really, because it would be a bit embarrassing. But yeah, I don't know if I do anything unusual in bed. I don't know.
I mean, some people kind of daydream. I was wondering, we'll talk about your bardic stuff later. But
yeah, I mean, people dream, and I must dream, but I don't remember them.
Oh, do you not?
I've talked to loads of people about this. If I had a dream last night, this happened. I thought, I went to sleep. It seriously annoys people because you must remember your dreams. Do you know, I really don't. I very, very rarely wake up and think, oh, that was a weird dream. And whereas people I know dream all the time, and I'm quite jealous, really, because I think I don't get these dreams. Why
There's people who keep books so they can write their dreams down, isn't there?
So I think talking to all my friends and what they get up into bed, I think the most unusual thing I do when I sleep is I actually sleep because they're up dreaming and tossing and turning, and I'm asleep. So that's really unusual.
I don't sleep very well, so I really envy you that. So let's move on back to the South Downs Way.
Yeah.
So you do this every year.
I have done, since about 4 years ago, yes. Yeah.
And would you say it's a kind of pilgrimage?
Yeah, I've used that term, pilgrimage, before. It's almost a pilgrimage in reverse. I mean, pilgrimage means you go somewhere. Well, it means different things, I suppose. I always thought of pilgrimage as you went to somewhere holy and did your worship and you made that chance to do that. But a pilgrimage can be a bit more than that, can't it? And there was, heard people talk about pilgrimages recently, but it was very much a pilgrimage. When I first did it, other than getting back in touch with the land, I love Sussex. The Long Man's a very special place for me. It's where my Druidry kind of started. So starting in Winchester and ending up at the Long Man was kind of a pilgrimage. The idea that I'm going to make a pilgrimage back to where my Druidry started. It all made a lot more sense to me to walk from Winchester to the sea. Why would you walk the other way? It didn't make sense to me. But
you kind of feel like you're in limbo the other way.
I don't want to go from the beautiful countryside to a city, however wonderful Winchester is. But it was a pilgrimage. It was a pilgrimage back for pilgrimage. Well, I walked the land to learn about myself. I did it on my own. I didn't go with anybody else. So it was just me and my thoughts for 4, 5, 6 days, or at varying times I've done it over the years, depending on what I've done. And it's time in my own head, which is sometimes not a very nice place to be, but it was time in my own head to put my thoughts into order, to get back in touch with the land. So it's a pilgrimage to get back in touch with the land and walk the land that our ancestors walked, quite literally, because we'd said earlier that the South Downs Way is an ancient trackway, and coming back to the long, and I never quite made it to the Longmen on the way back, or we stopped just short. So I never quite had that pint of beer in the Longmen pub just down there.
In the Giant's
Rest. Yeah. But that's okay, because every time I've done it the other way a couple of times. I've got something out of it, which is something.
Which kind of leads to my next question. Yeah. What did you learn about yourself? What have you learned about yourself doing these walks? Because that's a long way to walk.
It is. I quite like my own company.
Okay.
Which, so it's quite nice. I kind of learnt to live with some of my faults. And I know that some of them you might be able to change and should change, but you think, well, this is who I am. So I learned that. I learnt that my spirituality is more than just something that you do or write down on a piece of paper or talk to someone in bed about, It's much more. It is, when I found this connection with the land, it wasn't like, oh my God, that's really amazing. It just felt real. So that connection with the land, that spirituality was real in me, the goddess and the belief in that, I learnt about it. What else did I learn about myself? That I can be stubborn, but I knew that anyway, I think. But I can just carry on, and even in the pain. But you don't. But yeah, I don't know. I just.
And how did that feel? We have this as Druids. We have this connection with the ancestors.
Yeah.
How did that feel, walking in their footsteps? Because you would have suffered. Climbing those hills are the hills that they would have climbed.
It was. It kind of made me. Yeah. It put me in mind, we've got a lot of modern things in the modern world, and I love technology. I'm not knocking technology. I'm hardly off my phone. People will tell you after time. I've turned it off today because we're in bed. But this technology, Netflix, I love technology. But apart from having my phone there for emergencies, you can live without these things. So when you're walking on this ancient land, you were as close as you were going to get, or as I'm going to get, to the way that they lived, just walking. Especially when I did it last year with just a bivvy bag and no tent.
That was sounds amazing.
In the open, and it was great. But the year before that, when there was a moment, I didn't meet the goddess, but the second year I did it, I was on top of a hill, I think near Flindon, and it was very misty. I just passed Chankby Ring as well, and it was all very misty.
Oh, it was beautiful.
It was beautiful, but it was so misty. It just came out of the mist and disappeared in the mist as I walked past because it was raining. It was really early. And there was a part as I'm walking along through the mist where I thought I could hear like jingling.
Oh, wow.
Now, I don't know if you've seen the Detectorists program.
Yes,
about wine, people doing. I'm not going to say minesweeping. It's not minesweeping. It's metal detecting.
Crook. Yes, Mackenzie Crook.
But that's it. And they talk about there's every now and then a time slip moment, and when it looks like they're slipping for time. And I had one of these time slip moments where I heard this jingling of something that felt like I didn't see what it was, but it could have been either like a horse bridle, it could have been sort of armor or something from a group of soldiers ancient way walking past. But there was, in this mist, it was just me, and I heard this jingling, and I was way back thousands of years ago. And then this other walker came out in a very bright orange walking suits, and I'm not sure who was most surprised, me or her. We just kind of bumped into each other out of this mist, but she wasn't making the jingling because she just had a rucksack on, a day sack, and a bright orange day glow.
All of a sudden, you were back
in
modern
time, yeah. But it was, but that moments like that happened on a regular basis, and you could think and it was to be just me out there on the hills. You met people as you're going, but yeah, it was. I've said I want to do it every year that I'm physically able, even if it's only for a couple of days as opposed to the full 5 or 6 days. I want to walk the South Downs Way or maybe another trackway the following year. So I don't know, just while I'm able to, just to keep that connection going in that moment. It was, I don't want it to become kind of routine, but it's made a big impact on me. Knowing I can do it as well was quite
yes, I was going to say, you get the end of it and go, yes, I've done that. I mean, it's quite an achievement, actually.
It is. It was very hard to come back to. I mean, I was only away for 4 days, 5 days, but on your own, when I picked up at the station and there's people everywhere, I was like, oh, go away. It was quite horrible.
Yeah, you had all that expanse and that space and those views, and all of a sudden.
You're back in the real world again.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it was the biggest boon for me was time away from the world the day-to-day world. I don't have I live in this world, but to just take time away from, being a dad, husband or whatever, just take time away and just be myself away from somewhere that nobody else can impact on how I feel. Every decision I made was mine. Where I went, where I stopped, where I went, I was totally, it was up to me. So that with the connection with the earth as well, it's just really deepened my connection with the earth. And yeah, I know.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I'm going to move on a little bit now.
Yeah.
Greg talked a little bit about the drummers.
Oh, yes.
In the last episode. And of course, the lovely drummers are your baby too.
Yes. I'm the longest serving member of the drummers still around. I say serving makes it sound like a pain, but it's certainly not.
I kind of always think of you as their guardian, You're always there supporting them and guiding them, and they're what people probably don't realise is this group of people are like a family.
Very much. We are very much like a family. It's a word that's used a lot with groups and things, but Pentacle Drummers we're talking about for people who weren't there. I joined the Pentacle Drummers some 17 years ago, about the same sort of time as I picked up the Druid path, bizarrely enough. Eastbourne had a festival called the Lammas Festival. It was like a harvest festival that local pagan circle were running. It was a bit edgy then. It's now become quite an accepted festival, but it was a bit edgy because people
Local council weren't happy with it.
No,
all sorts of things,
pagans on our western lawns, whatever. So they is this disgusting? Is this what we want for these? But it was all that. It was really attitudes have changed greatly now. The current council support it, and it's really good. But at that time, it was very, very edgy. And there was a group of people from the pagan circle that used to have giants, Herne and Andrid. When I say giants, they were like 13 foot. They were huge, weren't they? There was Herne the hunter and Andrid, the goddess of the Sussex Weald. She was like a big blue goddess lady, and Herne the hunter with these stag antlers.
I think they're in Bexhill Museum now.
They're out now. They've now been taken over by, I think, one of the Hastings groups, but they've turned Herne into a fisherman and Andrid into a fisher lady, which is, it's kind of a shame, but at least the gods and the goddess are still out there.
They're still there.
They're doing different guys, but they're still there. So it's good to see they're still walking around. But so these puppet figures that walk through, they had a group of drummers. And they were short on drummers that year. And there's only about a dozen, well, less than that. There's about 8 of them at the time. And George, who founded the Pentacle Drummers, George Norton, who sadly he's with us, but he had to give up drumming because of his health issues. He said to me that year, have you drummed before? I went, no, never. He went, great. Here's some tatters. Here's a drum. You're in the possession. I went, what? So I put these tatters, I put the drum on. I thought, well, I'm just going to try and follow what's going on. And something clicked and I loved it. And within the first few paces, because there was very simple beats at the time because they're walking, and it just clicked with me. And I thought, I really like this. So I said, well, I'm not going to help out in the Giants, and I'm actually going to be one of the drummers. And I bought a drum. We went to Hurstman Zoo with the medieval festival. And that was like 17 years ago. And I'm still part of the drummers. And I'm now basically running the drummers with the committee, but I've been there. I book the events. Yeah, it's been my baby for 17 years. It feels like that as an older statesman of the drummers, even though I'm not the oldest drummer.
It's hard to believe it's 17 years. My goodness.
It is, but it's something I really love doing. It's an element of performance that I can get out there. It's nice to get out there and do some performance. Shouting to the crowd and the colour and the doing stuff like that. And then the events that we go to we get to go to some amazing. When I started, we did 4 events a year.
So what's the most unusual experience you've had with the drummers? Because I know you go to some absolutely amazing events, don't you?
I don't know, because maybe it's personal, maybe it's not. I mean, there are a couple of moments when you think, yeah, like this. One which is personal to me, which the rest of the drummers were like, what the heck? We drum at Stonehenge. We go to a Stonehenge festival. That's not the free festival that was in the 80s, but there's a festival that goes on. And we go to the last few years.
It's kind of like a festival, a musical festival.
It is a small music festival. And as the campsite that runs that puts on a free bus to the Stonehenge for the summer, this is at the summer solstice, I should say. And then we go there with the drums because we're at the festival. And we drum until the sun comes up and stuff. And it's great fun. Loads of people, a bit mad, but really good experience drumming in the stones. Yep. Like that, with people around you. It's a fantastic experience. The first year we did it, I'm drumming there, and this old boy with a saxophone starts just playing with me, and everyone else is going, who's that old bloke? And I'm going, it's Nick Turner. Now, some of you won't know who Nick Turner is, but Nick Turner is the saxophonist, or used to be in Hawkwind. Gary knows Nick. Then look at his face. He knows Nick. Nick Turner was playing the saxophone, and I'm drumming. I think, this is Nick Turner. And everyone's going, who is this old boy?
So nobody knew who he was.
Not the rest of the drummers at the time. I mean, this is what? And so drumming with a member I'm a big Hawkwind fan, still am. And drumming with a member of Hawkwind was quite special for me personally.
Absolutely,
that was wonderful. I think from a drumming perspective, that was all drumming in the Stones was fantastic. And you said about unusual, so we do the Butzer Beltane event. That's where they have this 40-foot wicker man.
Okay.
And they set fire to this 40-foot wicker man as part of their Beltane festival with about 2,000 people watching.
Wow.
And we've been doing this for the last 5 years.
And what's inside this wicker man? I've seen the wicker man.
Straw.
I know
Fortunately, no, Edward Woodward. There's nowhere to be seen. And there are no sheep or pigs in there either. But what they do is they let people put their wishes in and their things in into his legs.
So hang on, go back up. So what they do is they put people wishes. How's that? Yeah, how does that all work?
Butzer Farm is like an ancient technology centre. They've got round houses and long houses and Roman houses and stuff like that. So and their big fundraising thing. It is a fundraising thing for them. It's really good. Is that they have an event where they build a 40-foot wicker man, and then the climax of the day after music and stuff, when we drum there, is that they set fire to the wicker man, and that's the end of the day. But before they set fire to them, they say to people, okay, write something on a piece of paper. It might be a wish that you want to come true. It might be something that you want to get. Sorry, I just knocked the microphone there. It might be something you want to get rid of. It might be something that you're hoping for. It could be anything you want that you want to go out there to the, whether it be your gods, the goddess, the ether, the people around. Okay. So all afternoon people are putting messages into his legs because basically it's 40 foot. You can't really get any further.
No.
And then about 9 o'clock, they set fire to him and we drum until he burns. Now, when we first did it, they had a piece set aside for us, which was about 30 foot from the wicker man. And the guy, I think David Freeman, who sort of put it together, he said to us, "You up for drumming at his feet?" And we went, yeah. So,
is it a bit warm?
Yeah, no. We didn't think about this at the time. We thought we'd be standing by this phone and then wicker man burning. It's all right, we'll move. It's okay. It's okay.
Okay.
And so we started drumming. And they lit the wicker man, his feet went up, and we carried on drumming, and these 2,000 people are going, yeah! And it's like, I'm a rock star. Yes! Because it's the wicker man's burning, we're drumming, they're shouting, and every time we stop, they shout more. So we don't want more, we carry on drumming. So we didn't move down the hill when we should have done. And bits of his head started falling on us.
Oh, no!
Oh, time to move.
Oh, no.
So we moved a few feet only down, but still within the enclosure, and carried on drumming until he completely burnt down. And the cheering crowd, yeah, I mean, you say they're cheering for me and us, but they were cheering for the whole event. But it was an awesome experience. It does make you feel like you're special. And all the drummers are sitting, you feel like a rock star. 2,000 people shouting.
That's amazing.
And it was brilliant. Yeah, and we've done it. I think
so do you do that? Do you do that every year?
So 5 years now. We're back there on. I think it's it's not the 1st of May, but it's that early end of April, 1st of May.
Sure.
Weekend time. So we're back there this year. Yeah.
That sounds amazing. So which event do you enjoy most and why? Because you actually drum throughout the year, don't you? You do summer and the bonfires, which a lot of people aren't going to know because I'll let you explain more about that.
Oh, yeah, bonfires. What do I? I mean, when I started the drummers, we did about 4 events a year. Now we do about 40.
Wow!
So it's gone crazy over the last few years. I will talk a bit later, but I'm going to talk about something like family, but as well about the drummers, why I like the drummers so much. But I think, the question was, what was the event I enjoy the most, wasn't it?
Yes.
And I don't know there is one that I do. I mean, I just talked about Butzer Farm. That was the Beltane. That's brilliant because of the whole thing. It used to be years ago, Jack in the Green in Hastings, a May Day festival. Well, we haven't done that for a few years, and now Butzer has taken over for that for one or two reasons. But I enjoy them all. I will perform at a church fete the same way I will perform in front of 2,000 people at Butzer Farm, I think, because I just love drumming. And I think
you're a very animated performer.
Yeah, it's very true. I mean, that it's not just me. I mean, the whole group is. I mean, years ago, not long after I started, I got Greg involved after a couple of years. So we were drumming, and I was at one end and he was at the other. And I saw a video. The drumming was brilliant, really, really good. But there was only me and Greg going crazy at the end, and everyone else has really stayed.
Sure.
And I kind of looked at him and thought, do you know what? it's great, but we need to be more animated. And it used to be me and Greg doing the Muppet thing, and everyone else kind of quite stayed. But now, everybody's kind of come into their own. The atmosphere in the group is so good now. Everybody's doing their own little thing. Some of them are doing their own big thing. We feed off each other. And it's that.
You've got some
energy.
long-term members there as well.
We still
haven't
have. We've got people like Mark and Lisa. We've got Laura and Nick. We've got, obviously, as I said, Greg's been there. There's a few others. And there's a few others that have come in just the last few years. But the atmosphere recently, the last few years, has just been incredible in the group.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I enjoy about it. I love the events. We get some for Stonehenge is amazing. Butts of Farm is amazing. We do our own solstice events and stuff like that. And the wassail, we do our own wassail in Pevensey.
What's a wassail then?
A wassail is an ancient ceremony to bless the trees, to wake the trees in January from their winter slumber.
Apple trees?
Apple trees or fruit trees, traditionally apple trees, cider producing trees, yeah. So traditionally apple trees, it's all about cider, which is never a bad thing, is it?
No, nothing's.
And the idea is you wake the trees from their winter slumber, and scare away any malign spirits so they provide you a howling good crop for the coming year. And that's what it's all about. And then so we did our own wassail a few years. We used to do the Hunter's Moon wassail. Hunter's Moon, Morris dancing troupe from Eastbourne, who have sadly sort of finished dancing now. But we did theirs, and then we couldn't do it one year for various reasons, and they changed the format. So we did our own wassail, and so we have that. And that's one of my favourite events, I think, because it just runs itself now. That blessing of the trees in the winter time, just after Christmas blues.
And what do the drums do as part of the wassail?
Make a noise. Make a bloody big noise. I mean, that's about it, really. What do they do other than make a noise? We drum in with the rhythms we do.
Aren't they drumming up spirits of the apple trees?
The idea is to drum, to wake up the apple trees, yeah, absolutely. So two reasons. One, to wake up the apple trees, and rather than drum up the spirits, to scare away any malign influences from the trees. So that's why there's the shouting and the drumming, so that there's nothing that's going to stop that apple tree from giving you, as the wassail chant goes, a howling good crop in the coming year. So that I love that event, because now we do it in the shadow of Pevensey Castle and the Royal Oaken Castle pub. It's a fantastic location. So that's one of my favourite events. But go back to what I was sort of trying to say. I think
yes, please do.
I've got lots of events which I love, but what I love more than anything else is the energy within the drummers at the moment. I mean, It used to be me going crazy. It's now all of them doing their own little thing, and when I first started it, I could go crazy, so they didn't have to feel they were in the forefront. And now everyone's sort of stepping forward and doing their own thing. Different people are leading tunes. It's not all just sort of me or Greg. It's everybody doing their own thing, and we have become a family. And that's a word that you use a lot, and people say, are you really a family? Or are you just a bunch of friends? But we really do like each other as a group. And it's not just a casual hobby. I give you an example of one I think that always touches me, is that Laura, who's been a drummer for 7 years, got married a couple of years ago.
She did,
to Nick, who's also one of our drummers now. He had to be in the drummers because he thought he wanted to see Laura again. He would have to join the drummers. But they got married. Now, Laura's her grandfather passed away a few years ago, so she had nobody to give her away. And she said to me, "You're as close to a father as I've got. I want you to give me away at my wedding." Oh, and that is amazing. That was, that was really touching that she asked me to do that. And it was, and lots of the drummers were there. So there I was giving Laura away at her wedding. It was a magical moment. It was really nice to do. And that's what I mean about become a family. It's not just a group of people. There's a connection between us, with that, especially that core group of us, but between us all that makes us, we have our ups and downs, but we're really close as a group. And that's what I really like about drumming. That's what makes it fun for me.
Yeah.
If we were all miserable, but just went to events, I wouldn't like it so much, but I love that closeness we've built up over the years as a group.
Sure. And you guys do things outside the drumming as well, don't you?
There's events and things we go to separate like that. And there's quite a few drumming groups in Sussex now. And I don't want to get controversial, but I think what makes us the best, obviously I'm biased, but what I think makes us as good as any other is not just the tunes, because the drumming tunes may be the same as the other great groups in Sussex, but what makes us different is our attitude when we're drumming. We've got this, because we like each other, we like what we're doing, this performance element, and you can't see me waving my hands like an idiot in bed. That's what makes us what we are, and I love that. We have jokes amongst each other at each other's expense, but never in a nasty way. It's always really good natured, and and
that does come across when you guys are drumming, without a shadow of a doubt. And that being said, we're chatting here about the drummers. So if folks wanted to hear or see the drummers and they're not able to get to your events, where would they find you? Do you have a YouTube channel?
We have a Facebook page and a website, and then there's all the links to the videos and things that we're doing. So
okay, we'll leave. Drummers, we'll put all that in the show notes.
We've got the Twitter, we've got the Facebook, we've got social media. Look us up, drop us a line, and say hello. Yeah,
absolutely. So back to our bed question, because we're doing really well. I'm lucky not to have had a black eye. The way
no, my hands are waving about a bit. I do apologise. Is it my hands? Yes, it is my hands. So yes, come on.
If you could choose to share a bed with anybody, dead or alive, fictional or non-fictional, who would it be and why? And we've only got 3 hours. So
no, there's the why. Why would I? What are we sharing a bed with? I mean, if we talk about physical attraction or other reasons,
that's totally up to you. It's your
and there
question.
are possibly different answers as to why. Maybe some of them are very connected. So let's bring something that's down to physical attraction and something a bit else. Okay. Somebody like Kate Bush. Now, I love Kate Bush. I mean, I don't just like her. I love Kate Bush. She's a bit wacky. She's a bit weird. She's got all these wonderful ideas. As a younger kid, she was fantastic, wasn't she?
She was amazing.
Those outfits she wore, waving the arms about. It's a bit of a something. You know? Can you imagine us in bed together, wave, whoa.
That would definitely be a black eye moment, that one.
But I think it's not just, I mean, I had physical attraction for her when I was younger, and I still have. But, you know.
She's recently come back, hasn't she?
She has, yeah. And you know, she's not as good as it used to be in some ways, but it's better in other ways. It's different now. But her music is something I really love. I love her creativity. So I think combination of a physical attraction and an absolute deep appreciation of her art. And I mean that in the best possible way, honest.
It's definitely art you were talking about.
Oh,
right,
well,
okay.
No. That as well. Did you see in that babushka video? No, I'm not even going to go there. But yeah, possibly Kate Bush.
Kate Bush.
If you put me on the spot, yeah, someone like that.
Okay. Well, hopefully she's listening.
Yeah, Kate, I'm available. Sorry, Ruthie, I'm in YouTube.
No, go ahead. You're supposed to be in bed with me, for goodness sake. So let's talk a bit about your Bardic Journey.
Yeah.
Now, amongst all these other talents you have, you are a poet and a storyteller.
So people say, and I always feel a bit... It's almost a bit embarrassing when I never describe myself as a poet and a bard or storyteller. I know I talked about the bardic element, but, you know, it's not for me to describe myself as... I write poems and I write stories and I tell them and I like telling them. So if people think that makes me a poet or a storyteller, then that's really good.
I think it might, to be fair. I think that's a description of a poet or a storyteller.
But I think, I guess what I'm saying is I don't set myself up as a poet. Like, I'm not Wordsworth who makes life is to sell poems and things. I like writing poetry. They're of a particular type. I like telling stories, and I think for me as well, not my poems that I may write aren't necessarily the best words. I mean, some of them are quite good. I'm very proud of them, but I think I like performing them without not reading them. I like to perform them.
Okay.
On account of that, so they may not be the best words, but it gives me an avenue to.
However,
I
think you're being modest. I mean, I think what you should do is tell us about winning the Anderida Eistedfodd, or you could tell us a bit about it as well. Because
it is. I mean, that is something I'm very, very proud of. I'm not modest about that. For them, it is not listening. The Anderida Gorsedd, about 2007. I think it was that 2007, might have been 2006, the first one. But somebody asked Dave, they're writing a book of the Bardic chairs of the UK, and they asked Dave if his group, the Anderida Gorsedd, had a Bardic chair. And a Bardic chair is basically you appoint someone for that year who's going to be the bard of that area. And Dave said, yeah, of course we got one. And so then he decided to have one together, basically. I'm sorry. So he did. And he decided that the Imbolc ritual up on the hill at the Long Man would be the Bardic chair competition of Anderida, because Imbolc, being Bridget, one of the goddesses of Imbolc, and one of her aspects is the muse of poets and inspiration, as well as like hearth and home and the light. So it was absolutely perfect that we honoured Bridget with our stories and our songs or whatever we were doing. And the winner, that year, first year chosen by Dave and Kerry, was awarded the Bardic Chair of Anderida. They were the Bardic Chair, Chief Bard of Anderida. Chief Bard of Anderida. And, well, I didn't win it the first year, but I won it the second year, 2008.
And what did you get?
A fantastic plaque, ceramic plaque, individual one that Kerry makes. Each year it's slightly different. So
She's
it's totally
very, very talented.
Very, very talented. And it's, it's got inscribed on the back, but in the front it's got the Arwen rays and the sun and the moon, but it's always slightly different. And the thing I liked about it, so I was awarded, I got the second year I was Chief Bard. The second year, once you've won it, you can't enter the next year. You have to be one of the judges. And I like that because you can't have the same person winning it twice in a row. But then also at the end of your year as Chief Bard, you get to choose who's the next Bard. And that was quite nice because it's like your peers. It's not somebody from up high. So that was really cool. And then I was very honoured to win it in 2010. So the second year I got another plaque, slightly different, but it was still beautiful. And then there was a bit of a gap because everyone said you won it too many times, you can't have it.
Yes, Adam, stop winning it.
But 2015 was the last time I was awarded the Chief Bard. And this time it was a piece of wood carved by Kerry into this fantastic, I think it's lime wood, fantastic carving. One of the only time she's ever done it, I think. I don't think she's done that again. And it's totally unique piece. But it's similar symbols with the sun and the rays of the Arwen and the inscribed on the back to the Chief Bard. And every year I go and I compete, and the standard has got so much better over the years. I'm not saying I was the best a couple of years ago by a long shot, but I don't win it every year now, which is the way it should be. There's some fantastic people that go up there, but
there are some amazing talented people.
There are, and I enter every year with a piece that I've written, or it's always got to be something. It's not something you're not telling somebody else's story generally, or you're not telling somebody else's poem. You're telling you a story that you've made, or a poem or a song generally that you've made. So it's got to be there's only two rules. It's in February and it's normally up the hill. So the only rules are make it your piece and make it short because it's bloody cold up there.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But that aside, I've won it 3 times, but I enter every year, and I'm super, super proud of the fact that my peers have voted me a bard of the Chief Bard on 3 occasions. So it's not something I'm particularly modest about. Maybe I should be, but I think
I don't think so at all.
It's a brilliant thing. And I still go along every year, and everyone still says, "No, you've won it far too much. You're Bard." Yes, I know. Thank you very much. But I haven't won it for 5 years now, which is cool. Which is fine. And that's not bitterness. It might sound like it.
We'll have to see what happens next year.
Yeah.
So you've recently gone public, haven't you? You've gone public. You have a blog.
Oh, with that. Sorry, yeah.
Oh no, not the other stuff, Adam. We're not going to talk about that.
Thank goodness for that. Yeah.
So you've got a blog.
I've got a blog. Yes.
You've got a blog and a YouTube channel.
Yes.
So what made you suddenly go public? What happened? Because that's quite different, really.
It is, isn't it? I mean, the blog initially started. That I thought I wanted someone to share my thoughts about my walk across the South Downs. Mm-hmm. So I thought a public blog would be good. I could write it in a book and be for myself. I thought, well, other people might like to read it, and if they don't, that's absolutely fine. So I started that as a reason to do that. Of course, that you can only do so many posts about walking on South
Absolutely.
Downs. Really interesting. And it wasn't a travel log. So I started using that to put down some of my other thoughts on paganism issues or issues surrounding spirituality generally. So that, people started reading it and liked what I was writing. And I thought, well, this is also a good place. I might add a poem or, the words to a story I've written every now and again. It's a nice way of sharing those out there because some people ask me for the words of some of the poems I've written, which is, such an honor when someone wants the poem that you've written to.
They are very good, though.
Well, that's very kind of you. No, that's good to hear. And it is, I know it sounds like glib, but it is an honor when someone says, can I use your poem at my event or something? Mm-hmm. And I think, yes, of course you can. There's no better honor than you doing something that somebody else likes so much that they want to share with a totally different group. So sure. I was always very open for people could use that. And I thought, well, the blog is a really good way of doing that because I can put the words on there and then they're accessible at any time people want them. They don't have to ask me to send them to them, which is what I was doing. Mm-hmm. They could go on there and read them. And then somebody else said to me, it was Rebecca and Eva, between the two of them, sort of 2-pronged attack, although I don't think they were both talking at different times. Do a YouTube channel because your poems come alive and your stories come alive
when you tell them,
when you read them. And they're you. So you should let people see you telling your poems and stories. And I thought, first of all, do you know what? Nobody wants to see that. Nobody wants to see that, for goodness. But, people said to do it, so I did. Tried a few story with people recording it and stuff like that. And then I ended up just going into the woods, putting a camera in a tree and telling a story and telling a poem. And I bunged them up on YouTube. And it was called, like my channel and my blog are called Beneath the Long Man's Feet, because that's the Long Man of Wilmington, the chalk figure. And on that plateau beneath the Long Man's Feet is where some of these, or most of these, got their first telling as part of the Anderida Gorsedd Eistedfodd. So Beneath the Long Man's Feet felt like a really good name for my channel and my blog, because that's where these things started from. So that's my brand. And I add stories every now and again when they come to me, poems, and they seem to go down well. People seem to like hearing them and reading them. And I think I was saying earlier to someone that I like that the medium, the old stories need retelling.
They do.
The
definitely.
new stories need retelling if they're old retellings of the old tales. But there's no better way of telling an old story than by modern medium in these days. Like, shameless plug here, but the Celtic Myth Pod Show, you got the old stories told in a very modern medium.
Yep.
And that's brilliant. It gives access to these things that people wouldn't normally, nobody's going to sit down and read my stories, but they might actually listen to them on YouTube. And I think, and the old stories. So it just felt right to actually get them out there. And also I've always said stories are not my stories once I've written them. I mean, I like them. I think they're brilliant, but I think if you tell a story, someone else tells that story, it becomes their story. So by making them public in that way, it was a way I could gift them to anybody who wanted them.
Sure.
It's not my story. I wrote it, I put it together, but if you tell it, it becomes your story. So
that's really generous. A lot of people are very. I'm copywriting this now, And,
I don't do it for money.
No,
I'm never going to make money out of it. I don't get me wrong. I like it when people say this is a story I first heard by Adam Ranger. And so, but if someone tells my story at their event, I think years ago, I wrote my very first story. Somebody came back to me. It was a story about the origin of the Long Man. Somebody said, I want to tell you that. And I actually heard that story told back to me a couple of years later.
Amazing. That's amazing.
And it was a bit different to the way I told it, but it didn't matter because it wasn't my story. It was somebody else's story. And they told my story had gone round a group of people and come back to me. And I thought, how amazing is that?
That's a living entity, isn't it? It's a living,
brilliant.
Breathing, growing entity.
I loved it.
And that's amazing.
It made me feel good. It made me feel a bit of ego in there as well. I wrote that, yeah. But also I thought, but isn't it not the way? Did I tell it right? Because there's someone who heard that I told it. Well, you told the story, of course.
Absolutely.
not my story. Yeah, thank you. So it was, that was great.
You'll be able to find the details of Adam's YouTube channel again in the show notes. And while we're on the subject of stories, what would you say has been the most moving experience of your life so far? Quite a big question, isn't it?
It is a big question, isn't it? It is a really big question. There's so many moments and put on the spot, I think. I couldn't not say the birth of Freddie and Ross, my sons. I was there at the birth of both Ross and Freddie, and seeing these come into the world for the first time was just, it's always going to be amazing.
Sure. Ross
is 24. He's grown up to be a fantastic young man. Freddie's 10 in a few months. And again, he's such a character. And so being there at that moment when they came into the world, Ross was special as my first. Freddie was special for different reasons. It was a home birth and he was there and I cut the cord for him and everything. So he was, there's that connection there. I dropped him. He dropped in the bath, so it's my fault.
Oh my goodness.
But no, it was a moving moment. You can't, the birth of your children when you're there, there's got to be a moving moment. But there's so many different things for different reasons. So I don't know about the most moving moment in my life. I don't know. I sound let me be a bit sappy here for a moment.
Yeah, go
A few
ahead.
months ago, Christmas at Yule. Now, my partner Rebecca, she's got a daughter Gemma. I've known since she was about 11. She's 22 now. So she's lived with us for this time. I've been a stepdad, and I hope she's listening, so she won't mind me saying this. But yeah, so she lived with us and grew up with us, and maybe the relationship with her own dad wasn't as frequent as she wanted it. But at Yule, at solstice this year, or last year, it would have been last year, 2019, She's 21, and she said, it's about time I called you Dad. Now, our relationship has not been love-hate, but there have been moments when we've not really got on, but there's been moments where, I've always been there and I've always said I'd be there for her. And for her to say that to me, at 21 and I'm 53 or whatever, it was, tears are coming again. So that was very, because it's not, you do, it wouldn't matter. I would still do whatever I do for her if I could do things for her. But for her to turn around to me and say that, that meant a lot.
Yeah, I'd imagine.
Have you got a tissue onto that pillow?
I have indeed. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that. That's obviously a really, really personal moment for you, nice. and an unforgettable one. Thank you very much for being here. Thank you for agreeing to get into bed with me.
No, it's always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
And we'll hope Kate Bush is listening.
Yeah, well, yes,
And I've run out of questions, but I'd like to ask you, would you read us a poem?
I would be delighted to, if you think you want to hear one.
We would love to. Thank you very much. It's been a really enjoyable experience having you in bed.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. It's been all mine, I assure you. Thank you. No, I'm going to read a poem. It's called Beneath the Long Man's Feet. It's the first poem I wrote and performed at the Long Man in Wilmington as part of the Anderida Gorsedd. It's the name of my channel and everything, so it's all connected to Beneath the Long Man's Feet, so it feels appropriate. Maybe I do that for you here today.
Sounds great.
So if I can remember how it goes, sing us something else. When I told my mum I was a Druid, I think her bowels turned to fluid. You see, she had the most unnatural fear for things that she was not clear. When I told my dad I didn't believe in his God, he said, "Son, you always were a little odd." Then he turned with good cheer and went to his pub for a beer. Well, when I tried to talk to my friends at work, I always end up sounding like a bit of a Burke. And when I tried to have deep discussions with my mates, we always ended up in these stupid debates. So I went to the library for some books, where the librarian sort of smiled but gave me funny looks. And of the books that I did find to read, none really seemed to give me what I need. Now, doing things on my own just seems strange. But arranging a group, well, that was hard to arrange. But then one day, this group on a hill I found, and I listened in awe to the Arwen sound. And now, right there, beneath the long man's feet, a like-minded group of people I can meet. And finally, heart to heart and hand in hand, in a circle of peace and love, I happily stand. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for listening to In Bed with a Druid. And before we go, have a listen to a promo for another fabulous podcast.
Welcome to the Celtic Myth Pod Show, bringing the tales and stories of the ancient Celts to your fireside.
With a mixture of narrative and drama, we retell the ancient stories of the Celts in a way that's ideally suited to modern audiences.
He's talking about the bonds of fosterage, my husband, about sending our son away to the court of Bran, the High King, to be fostered as his son.
I'm to go away, but Mother...
Hush, boy.
What is the High King like, Pendaran? How much land does he rule? Tell me about his brothers and his sister. Why does Mother say their sister cherishes all things? How long will I stay in Gwynedd?
Slow down. Slow down, lad. Your questions are running faster than my lips can utter the answers you seek. I shall end up falling over my own tongue.
So far, you'll find the Irish mythological cycle and the first and second branches of the Welsh Mabinogion,
along with some special shows bringing you modern Celtic stories, music, and traditional folklore about the turning of the seasons.
So sit back comfortably and listen to the Celtic Myth Pod Show, available where all the best podcasts hang out, or on our website at celticmythpodshow.com.
Well, that's the end of our show today. If you enjoyed this interview, please do give us a review on iTunes and come and say hello on the Facebook page at facebook.com/inbedwithadruid, or on Twitter at inbedwithadruid, or on Instagram at inbedwithadruid. The links and mentions in today's show can be found in the show notes at inbedwithadruid.com. Thank you for listening, and come and cosy up on the next full moon for another different interview in Bed with a Druid. This podcast is a Celtic Myth Show production.